Alright guys, we are on our way down to Glazer's to get my Tele modded again. Now, when I was there the other day, Joe mentioned something called the triple tree, and when he's telling me about it and how he designed it, I'm like, this would be such a good video, would you mind basically doing all that again when I come down there next week? So here we are, headed down there. We're gonna mod my Tele, which is something that I think, after hearing Joe talk about it, all Teles really need. So let's get on down there. Nick's gonna do it for us, and then Joe's gonna give us the backstory and the history of the triple tree. Hey gang, I did want to hop in here real quick because if you guys are enjoying any of these videos, especially the more on location in Nashville videos, if you would, hit the subscribe button. It says the majority of you who watch the video are not subscribed. It really does help the channel out. I really appreciate it. And I'm telling you, the next couple months, the videos that we have coming up, I think are going to be some of the best videos we have ever made. So anyways, let's go ahead and get that triple tree put on my Tele. Take two.
No, you're good.
Okay, so installing the triple tree.
Yeah,
pretty
triple
simple.
Tree. Yeah, easy. We have the G string, as you can see here, has no break over the nut. This plane barely breaks, even though it's sitting way low on the tuner here.
Right.
So that's the whole point of this, is to be able to throw this on, direct replacement of one screw, so you don't have to add another string tree, which is usually, you know, right around in here, and add a hole to the top.
Yeah, which I was gonna, because some people might be like, we'll just add another string tree, and it's like, well, on like a vintage instrument.
That was the whole point. You know, a lot of vintage ones don't have a real hard scoop here, you know, and so we wanted something that was a direct replacement. We don't have to add a hole to something vintage and ruin the value of it.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is something like I could probably handle installing this.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Maybe. we'll just say maybe, but for now we'll let the professional do it.
Yeah, I'll just barely detune them so I don't throw the screw into the ceiling. Hold this down. Now, on yours, you don't have any kind of spacer in there. Do you want, we have 3 different size spacers to put in there if you want, or I can put it flat.
So what's the significance of the spacer, just to keep it from...
Yeah, it just keeps the tension, where you have a really strong tension, which can sometimes cause issues in here, binding a little bit.
Okay.
So you can get it up, still have tension on it, but not be a drastic, you know, I always try to kind of match the levels of these.
Yeah.
You know, I want everything to kind of have that even across, so I'd put a small spacer in there probably.
Okay. I'd say, yeah, whatever you recommend.
And you can always swap it out yourself.
If I'm like, this is just ruined my guitar, this spacer.
So, throw the spacer on there, like that. You can see it.
Yep.
Get straight, and voila.
And you're done. Told you this would be the easiest video.
Yeah.
Repair work you've ever done. Alright, now how do I take the fretboard off of my guitar?
Oh, I can show you that later.
Perfect. Alright, well now we'll go bug Joe and figure out all the details about it.
Beautiful.
And now we're gonna break down, what is this thing that we just installed on my guitar?
Well, we call it the triple tree.
Okay.
Or 3-string tree.
So what kind of brought on even creating this?
When I first started messing around with guitars, I was very influenced by the early Tele design. I thought that was pretty much optimized. I mean, I still think that. It's just optimized. And I was taught an awful lot by a few early players, John Abraham and Bill Hullett, who were, even in the 70s, absolutely, they were aficionados of the 50s Teles, the early 50s Teles, and they were experts in them. And they were not only experts in how they worked and why they worked, but the aesthetic of them. And they taught me pretty early on that anything you did that messed with that was not only, it was long before it created a huge devaluation, but that it was also basically a sin against nature, and that you know, that they were perfect. But the one thing that I didn't, the one thing that once I started working on guitars, I found was that quite often the G string, if there wasn't a string tree on it, as there wasn't on the early 50s Teles, would rattle in the nut because there wasn't quite enough downward pressure. And as you, it's not a problem that the low E or the A or even the D have, because they've got more of a break angle. But as you get out toward the long strings, I mean the distances, you can even hear it here.
Yeah.
It's just not enough downward pressure on the nut to keep it sounding clean. And it's very difficult to make that right on the G string. You can do it by cutting the nut correctly and winding a little bit of string down on the D, but you can't do it on the G no matter what you do. So when I started building, and so Fender, what they did is they added a second string tree, and they put it, they put one here and then another one there.
Right.
And it just looked like, an afterthought. It looked like kind of an abomination because you could see from 60 feet away that it wasn't an early 50s style build. And as a purist, I objected to that. Now it's a perfectly good idea to have two string trees, but I just, from a standpoint of a purist, it wasn't cool. So when I started building guitars, what I basically built, my earliest guitars were copies of 50s and early 60s Teles, not specifically. I mean, they were very accurate, but it was, I kind of copied the whole idiom that I was exposed to by Hullett and John Abraham and Rick Esserman, which was these sort of, by then worn and torn, thin finished Teles.
Right.
I mean, in 76 when I started, they were only 24 years old. But they still had, a lot of them already had a thing. And the finishes were thin. And then what Fender started doing in the late 60s and 70s, when they started to use polyester, was such a contrast, such thick finishes, that it was easy to turn it into a black and white situation. Anyway, I started building, and I didn't want to put a second string tree on, but I wanted to be able to pull the G string down. And I was putting benders on. I mean, I started building double benders in 78 or so, maybe earlier than that. And I thought that a string tree might have too much friction. And so I found one of these things. This is sort of the predecessor. This is the caveman of three-string string trees.
So this is the first one that you made?
Well, this is the style of the
first one.
I made 60 or 100 of them. I made the base on a milling machine. The rod is just a piece of rod stock, and then the rollers are string. They're just string ends.
Yeah.
And they roll, and it worked, and it wasn't a bad idea. This was the first version. The second one I made, the second style. I made a bunch of these, and then the second style sat a little higher up on an angle because you don't really need the G down as low as you need the high E and the B. And I hadn't figured out at that point, in fact, nobody had figured out that the distance between the string and the headstock has a lot to do with the feel of the string here. The deeper you set that string tree, the greater the perceived string tension. And
okay.
It's perceived string tension in the sense that it's still the same tension, or it wouldn't be an E. But the amount of work it takes to move it is influenced by that break angle. Same thing at the bridge.
I was going to say, is it kind of like on a Les Paul?
Yeah.
Like you dock the tailpiece to it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so it increases the work it takes to bend the string. It actually shortens the distance you have to bend that string. And the reason is because even though you're bending between these 2 points, you're borrowing string from up here. And the more you have to work to borrow it, the stiffer the string feels and the tighter the tension. Anyway, I made this, and then the second version of it kind of came up at a slant, so it put less tension on the low E. And then I forgot all about them. And till maybe 8 years ago, a couple people, Jim Olander, who'd had one of my very first guitars, he'd had a couple guitars I built, and one of the very earliest ones obviously had the string tree on it because I was using them. He said, my G rattles in the nut, I don't want to put a second string tree on. Remember that 3-string string tree you made? And I said, yeah, God, I just don't. I mean, it was cool then, and it wouldn't be okay now because the screw that it used sat in the middle, and you couldn't just put it on an existing guitar where there was a 2-string string tree.
Oh, okay.
And then I thought about, well, I could move the screw hole over, and if I moved the screw hole over, it would still sit down there. And then I thought about it, and I thought, well, actually, I could just make a string tree and make it like a normal one, but put one extra loop on it.
And then this is kind of the predecessor to what?
Yeah, this was a prototype.
Which turned into this one.
Yes.
But you guys offer different finishes and...
Yeah. The cool thing about this is because the screw is over here on the left, it lifts the extra leverage of these two strings lifts the bass side up. So it just inherently, instead of sitting like that, sits at a little angle. This is pure luck. But that's what it needs. The G string doesn't need to be held down as far as the B string, and the B string doesn't need to be held down as far as the high E. Pure luck. It could have gone the opposite direction, and it wouldn't have been so fortuitous. This I did make. What I did do is I took 2 blocks of steel, and I made one of them so this very shape, and then the other one this very shape, and I pressed them together in a vise over a piece of soft steel, and it formed this.
Oh, that's how you got the loops in it.
Uh-huh. Which is how they do it in manufacturing, but I just did it here in the shop. I sat there with this little Dremel, and I carved this shape into one side, and then carved that shape into the other side, so that they just come together. It's called a tool and a die. And then I took that piece of metal outside. Well, actually, before I did it, I heated up red hot so it gets soft. Because if you heat metal up red hot and then you let it slowly cool, it gets soft. And so then we bent it, and then I took it outside again and with a butane torch, heated it up red hot and dunked it in water or oil while it was red hot, and then it gets hard. That's how you harden metal, and that way it won't unbend. It won't straighten out or just bend straight up.
Yeah, because it's probably got a lot of tension on it.
It has tension.
Yeah.
So that's the history of the string tray. I was hoping to find that tool and die and show you, but I didn't. But anyway.
Yeah, that's still cool though. Can I see that one?
Yeah. You can see that hasn't been smoothed or buffed or anything. In a factory, it would look like that, and then they would tumble it to get the black off of it, and to round the edges, and then they would plate it.
Yeah. So you've got that one.
It would actually sit like this.
Like that.
Yeah.
That's cool. And like I said, Nick showed me you've got distressed ones, chrome, nickel,
black,
gold. Yeah. That's cool. Well, thank you, Joe.
You bet.
I appreciate that,
Thanks
man.
for being interested in it.
Yeah, actually, to me, it's all fascinating.
The thing about it, what's also hilarious, this is another little side story. Vince Gill, who's been one of my pals for decades and one of our customers, has a bunch of great old Teles, and he hasn't thought twice about putting the fret size he wants in there because he plays them. And for people who are really players, the primary value is how does it work and how does it play.
Right.
Him, Bonamassa, people like that. I don't think twice about taking a vintage guitar and changing frets. To me, it's like changing strings. But when he wanted a second string tree, he came to me and said, "Would you put a second string tree in here?" And I said, no, I'm not going to do it. And he said, "Well, I'm going to do it then." And I said, "Go for it." And his tech, Benny, who sadly died a few years ago, a great guy, went and put a couple of these things in the headstock, and one of them he broke the screw off because he was just screwing it in. He didn't pre-drill the hole. And so we always had this big laugh, and Vince would say, it wouldn't look like that if you'd put it in. And I said, well, it wouldn't look like that if you guys hadn't tried to install in the first place. So another reason to come out with this was just for that very reason, the 50s Teles, where it just was, there was just no solution. But that's not bad. I think we've had 40,000 of these things go out the door.
Wow.
So it must appeal to people.
So someone's using them.
Yeah, people like it. Yeah.
That's cool. Well, now they know probably a little bit more about the history of it.
And one day I'll find the original tool. It's kind of hilarious because it's so homemade.
Is it?
Yeah.
But that's the cool part of this stuff. I mean, even looking at this one, especially this, like I think that's. You said those are like string ends.
Those are string ball
that you put in there.
And
who thinks of that?
Yeah. And all my friends who are these Ned Steinberger and Ken Parker and all these madmen inventors think like that. It's half I want something that never existed, therefore I want it, and then half what is there laying around, because when you start to look into what they did, a lot of what what you end up seeing really came from something that was just laying around.
Laying around.
And that's, I learned a really important lesson from Gary Kaler, who had the Kaler Vibrato Company. And we were out, I did their locking vibrato. You could use it, and then if you pushed the arm down, it locked, and you could bend strings again. So that was my idea, and me and Dave Petchalot put it into use. And Gary Kaler said, it doesn't matter how you make something, it just better look like it's coming out of a big factory, because people will like it more and nobody will instantly copy you. And so on something like this, it didn't need to look like that for a prototype, but I wanted it to look like it was always made, that we didn't make it, that they always existed.
Awesome. Thank you, Joe.
Thanks a lot. Thank you.
All right, string tree it up. All right, we made it back. So check that out. This Tele has officially been triple treed. So a big old thank you to Joe and Nick down at Glazer's. Just thanks to them for always taking time out of their schedule to let me do these videos. I know I have to be totally in the way with the camera and stuff, but they put up with it, and they're just giving us a really good look behind the scenes of a lot of really cool stuff here in Nashville. So if you'd like one of these triple trees for yourself, I will link it all down below for you. Just go to Glazer's. If you're here in town or you need guitar work done, man, Glazer's is the best. The people there, the work they do, everything. So check that out if you would. I've got the bender put in this thing now. I don't have a guitar strap on. But it is all groovy, man. I got that triple tree. What mod are we doing next? Because we got another one we're doing here real soon. So I will see you all later, and I hope you all have a good rest of your day. All right, bye.